Hello everyone, I'm Kamraun.
And I'm Dane. Welcome to the Malazan Brotherhood podcast.
Today we will be discussing Book 2, Chapter 7, Part 1 of House of Chains, a novel in the Malazan Book of the Fallen.
This podcast series is intended to be a companion to reading or listening to the books set in the Malazan universe. It's not a book review, and it is not a replacement to reading the books.
We will be covering the events of the books in a linear fashion. There will be spoilers for those that have not read the books. We'll try not to spoil anything prior to us covering that portion of the respective book.
Today's episode contains descriptions of debauchery, and thus is not suitable for children.
Our show is listener-supported. If you'd like to support us, we'd really appreciate that. You can do so by visiting our Patreon link on our website at horsefrogproductions.com. Currently, we're posting ad-free episodes on Patreon weekly.
Also, we would really like to hear from you. Send any feedback or comments to contact@horsefrogproductions.com.
All right, Chapter 7, Part 1. The chapter begins with an excerpt. Quote, "An army that waits is soon an army at war with itself." End quote. And this was by Kelonved. It sounds like Kelonved was a wise man. Sun Tzu had a similar concept. Quote, "Like water held back by a dam, an army must have a channel for its energy. If it doesn't move, the energy turns inward." End quote.
Ooh, that's good. Being that this is my second time reading through, that quote by Kelonved and this by Sun Tzu is so apropos. It's perfect. You see it as you go through the series. I love it. It's good stuff.
Yeah, and it's not one particular faction either. It's any of the armies that we've been following.
Correct.
They start getting into trouble once they are not having something to focus that energy on. It's like having a husky.
Yeah.
The world was encircled in red, the hue of old blood, of iron rusting on a battlefield. It rose in a wall like a river turned on its side, crashing confused and uncertain against the rough cliffs that rose broken-toothed around the rim of Raraku. The holy desert's most ancient guardians, those bleached limestone crags, now withering beneath the ceaseless storm of the whirlwind, the raging goddess who could countenance no rival to her dominion, who would devour the cliffs themselves in her fury, whilst the illusion of calm lay within her heart.
So you said this last week, I think, back in the desert. You're happy about that, but who are we here with?
Don't bait me, Dave. I don't want to overreact here. Let's see if she's changed any, or if my reception to her is different now that it's been some time since we read Dead House Gates.
Okay. Maybe we can get a little refresh on where Raraku is, and maybe this basin that the heart is in.
Raraku lies to the southwest of Erlitan, which itself is in the northeast corner of Seven Cities. Now, in terms of where this basin lies within Raraku, I don't know.
Okay.
There may be a map out there. I didn't find it when I was looking.
I saw a map of the basin itself, but not necessarily its actual location, which I found interesting because apparently there is the ruins where some people are, and then there are a couple of other like hills where some of the other armies are kind of stationed on each of these hills by design to separate them so that they don't have too much of an issue like infighting, and then some other wooded area to the north, but all kind of encompassed in, it almost looks like a crater according to that map, but I thought that was pretty interesting too.
The old man who had come to be known as Ghost Hands slowly clambered his way up the slope. His aging skin was deep bronze, his tattooed, blunt and wide face as creased as a wind-clawed boulder. Small yellow flowers cloaked the ridge above him, a rare blossoming of the low-growing desert plant the local tribes called henbara. When dried, the flowers made a heady tea, mender of grief, balm against pain in a mortal soul. The old man scrabbled and scraped his way up the slope with something like desperation. No life's path is bloodless. Spill that of those blocking your path. Spill your own. Struggle on, wade the growing torrent with all the frenzy that is the brutal unveiling of self-preservation. The macabre dance in tugging currents held no artistry, and to pretend otherwise was to sink into delusion. Delusions. Hebric Light Touch, once priest of Fener, possessed no more delusions. He had drowned them one by one with his own hands long ago. His hands, his ghost hands, had proved particularly capable of such tasks. Whispers of unseen powers, guided by a mysterious, implacable will. He knew that he had no control over them, and so held no delusions. How could he? Behind him, in the vast flat where tens of thousands of warriors and their followers were encamped amidst a city's ruins, such clear-eyed vision was absent. The army was the strong hands, now at rest but soon to raise weapons, guided by a will that was anything but implacable, a will that was drowning in delusions. Hebrick was not only different from all those below, he was their very opposite, a sordid reflection in a mangled mirror. Henbara's gift was dreamless sleep at night, the solace of oblivion. He reached the ridge, breathing hard from the exertion, and settled down among the flowers for a moment to rest. Ghostly hands were as deft as real ones, though he could not see them, not even as the faint mottled glow that others saw. Indeed, his vision was failing him in all things. It was an old man's curse, he believed, to witness the horizons on all sides drawing ever closer. Even so, while the carpet of yellow surrounding him was little more than a blur to his eyes, the spicy fragrance filled his nostrils and left a palpable taste on his tongue.
Two things, I guess. As he's saying that he doesn't have any control over his hands, and they are ghost hands, I find it interesting that he can actually do stuff, pick flowers and all that with them.
I think he has control over them.
Okay, so maybe it's something else he's talking about?
Maybe more in the metaphysical realm. I don't know like how to describe it in terms of their effects on other things, maybe, because we've seen him climb ladders or put his hands into cliffs.
True. To
climb down with Felicin and Culp hanging from him and stuff. So he can definitely control them.
So maybe something else he's referring to, like you say, metaphysical, something else that he is referring to.
That's my guess.
Okay. The other thing seems like would be extra hard in a world like this, in a place like this, to have your sight failing you. I get the impression his other senses are kicking in, but losing sight, I don't know, man. I don't know how you deal with that. I always think of my grandparents, great-grandparents, when they started to really lose their sight. It seemed like it was a new level of despair for them.
Yeah, losing hearing is one thing, but to lose sight terrifies me.
Mm-hmm.
Have you had any issues with your eyes since turning 40?
So I have not, and this is a funny thing. My wife, at 40, she said she woke up one day and she was like, oh my God, I can't see that. I could see that yesterday. Now I can't see that. My eyes have still been in really good shape. And I was going to ask, you're bespectacled now. Is it just for reading or?
Yeah, it's just for reading, but I'm doing the thing that my dad used to do where I can't see my phone unless I hold it 3 feet out in front of me. He used to make fun of him, say, hey, eagle eyes, what's that thing say over there? Because your eyes are so good. Now I'm living it.
The only times I notice it is if I'm reading a lot and the text is small, that they will get tired after a while. And then it's like, I'll just take a break. But if I do put on like some cheater reading glasses or something, it can help. But even that I find is fatiguing.
I don't wish it on anybody, man. Granted, I can still see, but to lose it entirely.
Yeah.
There's a famous Spanish artist named Francisco Goya. He began to lose his eyesight in his old age. So he retreated to his house and he has a series of paintings. They're called the dark paintings, I think, where his art style changed. There's a really famous one that a lot of people might be familiar with where it's Saturn eating his son.
Okay.
It's a really horrifying image of a giant man eating another smaller man in his hands. There's a couple other ones that are super creepy. The guess is that due to him losing his eyesight, he had to change his art in a certain way. And you can see how mentally it was affecting him through what's coming through in these images.
Yeah.
You know, so I think this is like really relevant to what you're talking about as you begin to lose your eyesight, the effects on you psychologically.
Mm-hmm.
Bring it back to Malazan. I'm curious if Hebrick's going to have some supplemental sorceress abilities granted to him where he won't need his eyesight to survive.
Okay.
Maybe he has some extra sensory perception that he can rely on.
Time will tell, I suppose.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
The desert sun's heat was bludgeoning, oppressive. It had a power of its own, transforming the holy desert into a prison, pervasive and relentless. Hebrick had grown to despise that heat, to curse 7 cities, to cultivate an abiding hatred for its people. Did you write that statement?
I could have.
From your mouth directly.
I definitely thought it. So when I was reading through this, I was nodding along.
That's funny. And he was trapped among them now. The whirlwind's barrier was indiscriminate, impassable both to those on the outside and those within, at the discretion of the chosen one. Movement to one side, the blur of a slight, dark-haired figure, who then settled down beside him. Hebrick smiled and said, I thought I was alone. The figure said, we are both alone, ghost hands. Hebrick said, of that, Felicin, neither of us needs reminding. He thought, Felicin younger, but that is a name I cannot speak out loud. The mother who adopted you, lass, has her own secrets. He continued, what is that you have in your hands? Felicin replied, scrolls from mother. She has, it seems, rediscovered her hunger for writing poetry. Hebert grunted and said, I thought it was a love, not a hunger. Felicin said, You are not a poet. In any case, to speak plainly is a true talent. To bury beneath obfuscation is a poet's calling these days. Hebert said, You are a brutal critic, lass. Felicin said, Call to shadow, she has called it. Or rather, she continues a poem her own mother began. Hebert said, Ah, well, shadow is a murky realm. Clearly she has chosen a style to match the subject. Perhaps to match that of her own mother. Felicin said, Too convenient, Ghost Hands. Now, consider the name by which Corbollo Dom's army is now called. Dog Slayers. That, old man, is poetic. A name fraught with diffidence behind its proud bluster. A name to match Corbollo Dom himself, who stands square-footed in his terror. Hebert reached out and plucked the first flower head. He held it to his nose a moment before dropping it into the leather bag at his belt. He repeated, square-footed in his terror, then said, An arresting image, lass, but I see no fear in the Nappin. The Malazan army mustering in Erin is nothing but 3 paltry legions of recruits, commanded by a woman devoid of any relevant experience. Corbollo Dom has no reason to be afraid. The young girl's laugh was a trill that seemed to cut an icy path through the air. She said, No reason, Ghost Hands? Many reasons, in fact. Shall I list them? Leomin, Toblakai, Bidithal, Laoric, Mathok, and the one he finds most terrifying of all, Shaik, my mother. The camp is a snake pit seething with dissent. You have missed the last spitting frenzy. Mother has banished Malik Rel and Pulik Alar, cast them out. Corbollo Dom loses 2 more allies in the power struggle. Malik Rel and Pulik Alar. 2 more despicable creatures join ranks with Silgar as the lowest of the low.
Yeah. Malik Rel, familiar. Pulik Alar, I don't recall this one.
You may recall the name Nethpara.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
That's the one that Duiker kicked in the face or the throat or something.
That's right.
This was one of his compatriots.
Okay.
So one of the nobles on the chain of dogs.
Oh,
he
one of the nobles,
was the one advocating that they trust Corbollo Dom's peace offer when they were crossing the river Vathar.
Okay.
He's one of the ones that had Pormqual's ear when they got to Erin, kind of setting
right.
Pormqual against Coltane.
Okay. Yeah, definitely falls into that mold.
Tugging at a handful of flowers, Hebert growled. There is no power struggle. They are fools to believe that one is possible. Shaik has thrown those 2 out because treachery flows in their veins. She is indifferent to Corbollo Dom's feelings about it. Shaik casting them out may show some wisdom on her part.
I agree. She's detected something detestable enough to where it says, out goes you.
Felicin swiped the plants before her with the scrolls and said, He believes otherwise, and that conviction is more important than what might or might not be true. And how does Mother respond to the aftermath of her pronouncements? With poetry. Hebert muttered, The gift of knowledge. The whirlwind goddess whispers in the chosen one's ear. There are secrets within the warren of shadow, secrets containing truths that are relevant to the whirlwind itself. Felicin asked, What do you mean? Hebert's bag was nearly full. He shrugged and said, Alas, I possess my own prescient knowledge. Then he thought, And little good it does me. He continued, The sundering of an ancient warren scattered fragments throughout the realms. The whirlwind goddess possesses power, but it was not her own, not at first. Just one more fragment, wandering, lost, and in pain. What was the goddess, I wonder, when she first stumbled onto the whirlwind? Some desert tribe's minor deity, I suspect. A spirit of the summer wind, protector of some whirlpool spring, possibly. One among many, without question. Of course, once she made that fragment her own, it did not take long for her to destroy her old rivals, to assert complete, ruthless domination over the holy desert.
This is a great little paragraph, and it seems like it's kind of piggybacking off of what we just learned in the last chapter with Troll and Onrak, and that each fragment sounds like it has its own bit of individual power is quite interesting to me.
Agreed. And it also makes me curious as to what limit there is to the power granted by these Warren fragments.
Yeah, that's true. Just somebody falling into it. I mean, I guess, are you talking about the limited power of that piece of it, or?
This was a spirit. She obviously gained a lot of power when she got this fragment of it. But what does that actually manifest from a power level perspective? This seems to be really limited to a localized part of the world. You can't just go into the Whirlwind Warren and pop out somewhere else. This kind of goes to some of these warrens almost seeming like a replica or tendrils going around the world to where it has to coexist almost like a multiverse overlaid on top of it so you can travel between it. The whirlwind seems like this fragment is pinned in place here in this holy desert, and you can't really use it to travel anywhere. Maybe within the holy desert, you could go from one side to the other or something like that. At the end of Deadhouse Gates, Shaik did create that tunnel to take her army and travel. It does seem like there are some uses for it outside of this, but I don't think it can span like the Realm of Shadow or the Imperial Warren, for example, where it could travel all over the place. It's a little murky on what the limitations are around this.
Well, I think when you mentioned that it's kind of pinned in place, there was some reference a little while ago about how the Azath Tremorlore had kind of pinned that part of Shadow down.
Yes.
So that makes very good sense relating to this, that the heart of Raraku is kind of its own paperweight, I guess, for this fragment of Shadow, and it can't really, like you said, spread out over continents, across multiple continents or something like some other Warrens can. So, yeah, that's interesting. Okay.
Felicin drawled, "A quaint theory, Ghost Hands, but it speaks nothing of the 7 holy cities, the 7 holy books, the prophecy of Dryjna the apocalyptic." Hebrik snorted and said, "Cults feed upon one another, lass. Whole myths are co-opted to fuel the faith. 7 cities was born of nomadic tribes, yet the legacy preceding them was that of an ancient civilization, which in turn rested uneasy on the foundations of a still older empire, the first empire of the Talani mass. That which survives in memory or falters and fades away is but chance and circumstance." Felicin dryly said, "Poets may know hunger, but historians devour, and devouring murders language, makes of it a dead thing." Hebrik replied, "Not the historian's crime, lass, but the critic's." Felicin asked, "Why quibble? Scholars, then." Hebrik said, "Are you complaining that my explanation destroys the mysteries of the Pantheon? Felicin, there are more worthy things to wonder at in this world. Leave the gods and goddesses to their own sickly obsessions." Felicin's laugh struck through him again. She said, "Oh, you are amusing company, old man. A priest cast out by his god, a historian once jailed for his theories, a thief with nothing left worth stealing. I am not the one in need of wonder."
So we've only just met this broad, and already I am finding her grating. She sounds very bitter and derisive. I remember that from first time reading. Now, I guess we don't really know anything about her past yet, but I suppose if you've grown up living a hard life, you're sort of primed to be a certain way, maybe.
How much of this is the tendency of teenagers to argue with their elders? Yeah. Don't ask me how I know. They think they know everything and don't place any value on the wisdom and experience of the people trying to help them. You know?
Yep.
It reminds me of the quote by Mark Twain, or it's attributed to Mark Twain. "When I was a boy of 14, my father was so ignorant I could hardly stand to have the old man around. But when I got to be 21, I was astonished at how much the old man had learned in 7 years."
That's fantastic. I do think of my own arguments with my father in the exact same vein as this, where, you know, you're 16 or 17 and everything is wrong. And we've had conversations recently where it's like, "You remember when you used to tell me that?" And he's like, "Would you think I was lying? You think I don't know what I'm talking about?" It's like, yeah, of course I thought you were lying. 16 years old, I knew all of it.
Yeah, I was trying to look up the right way to describe this, and one of the quotes that came about was, "They think the world was discovered yesterday," or something like that. You know?
That's good. I like that.
Hebrik heard her climb to her feet as she went on. "In any case, I was sent to find you." He asked, "Oh, Shaik seeks more advice that she will no doubt ignore?" Felicin replied, "Not this time. Leomin." Hebrik scowled as he thought, "And where Leomin is, so too will be Toblakai. The Slayer's only quality, his holding to his vow to never again speak to me. Still, I will feel his eyes upon me, his killer's eyes, if there's anyone in the camp who should be banished." Let's have a quick refresher on the enmity between Hebrik and Toblakai.
Yes, please.
Upon meeting at the site of the original Shaik's death, mutual contempt arose between the two men instantly. The conflict escalated when Hebrik used his spiritual sensitivity to mock Toblakai about the souls that are haunting him. Hebrik asked if the ghosts of children tied to Toblakai's heels had begged for their lives. In response to this taunt, Toblakai vowed, "When I speak to you next, it will be when I kill you."
Ooh.
The physical fight occurred during the ritual to open the Book of Dryjna. When Hebrik refused to participate in the ritual, Toblakai offered to kill him, saying, "Let me kill him, Shaik Reborn. Let his blood seal this ritual." Toblakai moved in a blur, slashing his wooden bloodwood sword at Hebrik's head. Hebrik's invisible ghost hands flared. one the hue of dried blood, the other bestial and fur-backed. He caught the massive warrior's wrists mid-swing, stopping the blow dead.
Ooh.
Hebrick then grasped the giant by the neck and belt and threw him out into the darkness, where Toblakai landed with a thud that shook the ground. This is absolute madness. We know just how strong Karsa is now that we got a proper introduction to him in this book. Looking back at what Hebrick did here, it's truly impressive. He's performing like a magic-infused warrior.
Yeah, and that's a fantastic pull to bring it forward, because you're right, you don't know anything about him when we first read that in Dead House Gates. And to have that whole first part of House of Chains now, to see what a formidable Toblakai warrior he is, Teblor, I suppose I should say, back then, really amazing. And yeah, he has to have been infused, right? Hebrick has to have been infused.
Yeah, he's a short toad-like creature, you know, kind of a power lifter build is what I've always pictured him as, kind of a short, stocky guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is fantastic, because I didn't remember any of that stuff. I was trying to remember, why did he hate him so much? I couldn't remember. Something I remembered about his seeing his trail of souls and stuff, but I had forgotten about this little kerfuffle that they got into.
I wonder how much of this is wounded pride for Karsa, too. I mean, he got suplexed.
And by another person much smaller than him. This is a theme.
Yeah, this isn't Keeper, who was arguably large for a human being. Is not that same scenario at all.
Exactly.
Hebrick slowly clambered upright and asked, "Where will I find him?" Felicin replied, "In the pit temple." Hebrick thought, "Of course. And what, dear lass, were you doing in Leoman's company?" Felicin added, "I would take you by hand, but I find their touch far too poetic." She walked at his side, back down the slope, between the two vast kraals which were empty at the moment, the goats and sheep driven to the pastures east of the ruins for the day. They passed through a wide breach in the dead city's wall, intersecting one of the main avenues that led to the jumble of sprawling, massive buildings of which only foundations and half-walls remained, that had come to be called the Circle of Temples. Adobe huts, yurts, and hide tents fashioned a modern city on the ruins. Neighborhood markets bustled beneath wide, street-length awnings, filling the hot air with countless voices and the redolent aromas of cooking. Local tribes, those that followed their own war chief, Mathok, who held a position comparable to general in Shaikh's command, mingled with dog slayers, with motley bands of renegades from cities, with cutthroat bandits and freed criminals from countless Malazan garrison jails. The army's camp followers were equally disparate, a bizarre self-contained tribe that seemed to wander a nomadic round within the makeshift city, driven to move at the behest of hidden vagaries no doubt political in nature. At the moment, some unseen defeat had them more furtive than usual. Old whores leading scores of mostly naked, thin children, weaponsmiths and tack menders and cooks and latrine diggers, widows and wives and a few husbands and fewer still fathers and mothers. Threads linked most of them to the warriors in Shaikh's army, but they were tenuous at best, easily severed, often tangled into a web of adultery and bastardy. The city was a microcosm of 7 cities, in Hebrick's opinion, proof of all the ills the Malazan Empire had set out to cure as conquerors than occupiers. There seemed few virtues to the freedoms to which the ex-priest had been witness, here in this place. Yet he suspected he was alone in his traitorous thoughts. The Empire sentenced me a criminal, yet I remain Malazan nonetheless, a child of the Empire, a reawakened devotee to the old Emperor's peace by the sword. So, dear Tavora, lead your army to this heart of rebellion, and cut it dead. I'll not weep for the loss.
This is something that I wonder about a lot. How do people choose this over living in cities? As Hebrick says, there seem to be few virtues to the freedoms in this place. There are people who seem to rail at injustice and various forms of governments, claiming that whatever laws of the land are restrictive, and they would choose to exist in a place like this instead. I get the impression that some people, both in real life and some we'll see later in this chapter, use this as an excuse to justify their misaligned moral compasses. Kind of what I'm thinking of is places maybe like Seattle, that Chaz Chop area. While they may have started off with an intent of being a utopia, they claim to be free, but there's probably some really bad stuff going on there under that guise of freedom. What do you think? Do you have any opinion on that?
Human nature inevitably comes into play, I think, in all these scenarios. In low trust societies, it always seems to boil down to who wields the biggest stick. I'm thinking of Chaz in particular, the guy that had the weapons and stuff. became a quote-unquote warlord, basically. And
right.
yeah, some bad stuff was going on in there. The police couldn't get in there to deal with it.
Right.
People will band together into tribes. Then it's trust within the group with lack of trust with the out-group. Until someone with a bigger stick comes and you need to band the tribes together to fend them off. The unifying power of a larger outside threat, we've discussed this in the past.
Yeah.
The Teblor are a perfect example of this, as well as the tribes of Seven Cities. They were never unified until the Malazan Empire came to this continent.
True. Yeah, okay.
Now, to your question about why people would choose this, I think Hebrick implied that this was the norm in Seven Cities before the Malazans came here to try to solve it.
Oh.
They don't allow a lot of the stuff we're seeing here.
Okay.
The women and children seem to have more rights, which are secured by Malazan rule of law.
That's a good point. Okay. I mean, I guess that makes sense. If it is the norm, then it's not really a choice. It's just the way it is. But it seems different since we're, I guess, more accustomed to some of the places we've already been in the book. Malazan rules and stuff like that kind of frown on these, or they're outright illegal or outlawed or whatever. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the sad state of the world is you have to offer something of value that people are willing to pay you for you to survive. And a lot of these people, they're tied to these soldiers or warriors, and I'm not sure how they're really getting paid.
Yeah.
It's not like the Malazan armies where they have the back pay that they're owed, and they're knowing that they're eventually probably going to get paid for what they're doing.
Right.
And it's just like a survival situation. People go to where they think they have the best opportunity. And here now, everybody's trapped. So these people, especially the women that may have gotten knocked up by one of the soldiers and then they have a child, what can they do to survive? You know, they're at the mercy of whoever's willing to give them resources.
That's a good point.
The circle of temples was virtually abandoned compared to the teeming streets the two had just passed through. The home of old gods, forgotten deities once worshipped by a forgotten people who left little behind apart from crumbling ruins and pathways ankle-deep in dusty potsherds. Yet some of the sacred still lingered for some, it seemed, for it was here where the most decrepit of the lost found meager refuge. Can I get a sherd count going for this book?
We're going to have to. I think this might have been one of those points when the first time I was reading through, I was like, this is a great word I've never heard before. And it started to, like, your ochre, you know, just kind of started to stick in the back of the head, like keeping mental tally.
Question on that. I thought Deadhouse Gates had its fair share of sherd imagery and descriptions.
It could have. It seems like a Seven Cities thing, much like spitting.
There's a spitting, yeah.
Potsherds aplenty.
Yeah. A scattering of minor healers moved among these destitute few, the old widows who'd found no refuge as a third or even fourth wife to a warrior or merchant, fighters who'd lost limbs, lepers, and other disease victims who could not afford the healing powers of High Denul. There had once numbered among these people abandoned children, but Shaik had seen to an end to that. Beginning with Felicin, she had adopted them all, her private retinue, the whirlwind cult's own acolytes. By Hebrick's last cursory measure, a week past, they had numbered over 3,000, in ages ranging from newly weaned to Felicin's age, close to Shaik's own true age. To all of them, she was mother. It had not been a popular gesture. The pimps had lost their lambs. In the center of the city of temples was a broad octagonal pit sunk deep into the layered limestone, its floor never touched by the sun, cleared out now of its resident snakes, scorpions, and spiders, and reoccupied by Leomin of the Flails. Leomin, who had once been Elder Shaik's most trusted bodyguard. But the reborn Shaik had delved deep into the man's soul and found it empty, bereft of faith, by some flaw of nature inclined to disavow all forms of certainty. The new chosen one had decided she could not trust this man, not at her side at any rate. He had been seconded to Mathok, though it seemed that the position involved few responsibilities. While Toblakai remained as Shaik's personal guardian, the giant with the shattered tattoo on his face had not relinquished his friendship with Leomin, and was often in the man's sour company.
It sounds like some things have changed between when we were with Leomin and Toblakai since Deadhouse Gates.
If Leomin was judged and found lacking, then it makes sense. You have to trust your bodyguards.
That's very true. I guess if she did, like he says, delved into his soul, and this is very cult-like behavior, she sent something in there that is not fully committed, I guess. What choice do you have if you're leading this whole cult?
Yeah, you need true believers.
Yeah, okay. I also wonder why Toblakai stays in this outfit instead of going off on his own. Why does he stay as Sheik's personal bodyguard? I want to know more about that, because from what we know of him, his past, this seems just a little out of character to me. Is it possible we're still missing some information in that gap of time?
First, can he even get through the whirlwind to escape if he wanted to?
Okay, that's true.
And then also I was thinking maybe it has something to do with driving Silgar fully mad. Maybe he hasn't finished his task yet.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a good point. He's got some unfinished business.
Yeah, but finally, I guess, going back to the prior thing with Leoman, I would think that Shaik also looked into Toblakai's soul, and I guess he's a little bit more superstitious, and he's seen what she's capable of, so maybe for him, he does believe something in relation to protecting her.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
She's the enemy of the Malazans, after all, and they are his enemy.
That's true. He did declare that, didn't he? Immediately.
Yes.
The Malazans are my enemy.
They sound like my enemy.
Yeah.
There was history between the two warriors, of which Hebrick was certain he sensed but a fraction. They had once shared a chain as prisoners of the Malazans, it was rumored. Hebrick wished the Malazans had shown less mercy in Toblakai's case. At the pit's brick-lined edge, Felicin said, "I will leave you now. When next I desire to clash views with you, I will seek you out." Grimacing, Hebrick nodded and began making his way down the ladder. The air around him grew cooler in layers as he descended into the gloom. The smell of Durhang was sweet and heavy, one of Leoman's affectations, leading the ex-priest to wonder if young Felicin was following her mother's path more closely than he had suspected. The limestone floor was layered in rugs now. Ornate furniture, the portable kind wealthy traveling merchants used, made the spacious chamber seem crowded. Wood-framed screens stood against the walls here and there, the stretched fabric of their panels displaying woven scenes from tribal mythology. Where the walls were exposed, black and red ochre paintings from some ancient artist transformed the smooth, rippled stone into multi-layered vistas, savannas where transparent beasts roamed. For some reason, these images remained clear and sharp to Hebrick's eyes, whispering memories of movement ever on the edges of his vision. This is the kind of stuff I'm talking about, where it seems like he's getting some extrasensory perception.
Yeah.
Old spirits wandered this pit, trapped for eternity by its high, sheer walls. Hebrick hated this place, with all its spectral laminations of failure, of worlds long extinct. Toblakai sat on a backless divan, rubbing oil into the blade of his wooden sword, not bothering to look up as Hebrick reached the base of the ladder. Leoman lay sprawled among cushions near the opposite wall. He called in greeting, "Ghost Hands, you have Henbara? Come, there is a brazier here, and water." Hebrick strode over and replied, "I reserve that tea for just before I go to bed. You would speak with me, Leoman?" Leoman said, "Always, friend. Did not the Chosen One call us her sacred triangle? We three, here in this forgotten pit? Or perhaps I have jumbled my words, and should reverse my usage of sacred and forgotten. Come, sit. I have herbal tea, the kind that makes one wakeful." Hebrick sat down on a cushion and asked, "And what need have we to be wakeful?" Leoman's smile was loose, telling Hebrick that Durhang had swept away his usual reticence. He murmured, "Dear Ghost Hands, it is the need of the hunted. It is the gazelle with the nose to the ground that the lion sups with, after all." Hebrick's brows rose. He asked, "And who is stalking us now, Leoman?" Leaning back, Leoman replied, "Why, the Malazans, of course. Who other?" In mocking earnest, Hebrick said, "Why, most certainly then we must talk. I had no idea, after all, that the Malazans were planning on doing us harm. Are you certain of your information?" Toblakai spoke to Leoman. "As I have told you before, this old man should be killed." Leoman laughed and said, "Ah, my friend, now that you are the only one of us three who still has the Chosen One's ear, as it were, I would suggest you relinquish that subject. She has forbidden it, and that is that. Nor am I inclined to agree with you in any case. It is an old refrain that needs burying." Hebrick said, "Toblakai hates me because I see too clearly what haunts his soul, and, given his vow to not speak to me, his options for dialogue are sadly limited." Leoman said, "I applaud your empathy, Ghost Hands." Hebrick snorted and said, "If there is to be subject to this meeting, Leoman, let's hear it, else I'll make my way back to the light." Leoman chuckled, saying, "That would prove a long journey. Very well, Bidithal is back to his old ways." Hebrick asked, "Bidithal, the High Mage? What old ways?" Leoman replied, "His ways with children, Hebrick, girls, his unpleasant hungers. Shaik is not all-knowing, alas. Oh, she knows Bidithal's old predilections. She experienced them firsthand when she was Shaik Elder, after all. But there are close to 100,000 people in this city now, a few children vanishing every week, easily passing virtually unnoticed. Mathok's people, however, are by nature watchful.
Bidethal is a name I had forgotten, and my skin is crawling now that I'm remembering him.
Yeah, he's one of the most despicable characters in the books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Heberick scowled, asking, "And what would you have me do about it?" Leomin asked, "Are you disinterested?" Heberick replied, "Of course not, but I am one man, without, as you say, a voice, while Bidethal is one of the 3 sworn to Shaik, one of her most powerful high mages." Leomin began making tea. He murmured, "We share a certain loyalty, friend, the 3 of us here, with a certain child, who has caught Bidethal's eye." He looked up then, leaning close as he set the pot of water on the brazier's grate, his veiled blue eyes fixing on Heberick. He continued, "But that attention is more than simply sexual. Felicin is Shaik's chosen heir. We can all see that, yes? Bidethal believes she must be shaped in a manner identical to her mother, when her mother was Shaik Elder, that is. The child must follow the mother's path, Bidethal believes. As the mother was broken inside, so too must the child be broken inside." Cold horror filled Heberick at Leomin's words. He snapped a glare at Toblakai. Heberick shouted, "Shaik must be told of this!" Leomin said, "She has, but she needs Bidethal, if only to balance the schemes of Febril and Lorik. The 3 despise each other, naturally. She has been told, Ghost Hands, and so she tasks us 3 in turn to be watchful." Heberick snapped, "How in Hood's name am I supposed to be watchful? I am damn near blind. Toblakai, tell Shaik to take that wrinkled bastard and flay him alive. Never mind Febril and Lorik." The huge savage bared his teeth at Leomin as he said, "I hear a lizard hissing from under its rock, Leomin of the flails." Such bravado is quickly ended with the heel of a boot. Leomin sighed and addressed Heberick. "Ah, alas, Bidethal is not the problem. Indeed, he may prove Shaik's savior. Febril schemes betrayal, friend. Who are his co-conspirators? Unknown. Not Lorik, that's for certain. Lorik is by far the most cunning of the 3, and so not a fool by any measure. Yet Febril needs allies among the powerful. Is Corbolo Dom in league with the bastard? We don't know. Chemist Rello, his 2 lieutenant mages, Hennerus and Fael? Even if they all were, Febril would still need Bidethal, either to stand aside and do nothing, or to join." Toblakai growled, "Yet Bidethal is loyal." Leomin agreed, saying, "In his own way, and he knows that Febril is planning treachery, and now but awaits the invitation, whereupon he will tell Shaik." Toblakai said, "And all the conspirators will then die." Heberick shook his head, saying, "And what if those conspirators comprise her entire command?" Leomin shrugged, then began pouring tea. He said, "Shaik has the whirlwind, friend. To lead the armies, she has Mathok, and me. And Lorik will remain, that is certain. 7 take us. Corbolo Dom is a liability in any case." Heberick was silent for a long moment. He made no move when, with a gesture, Leomin invited him to partake of the tea. Heberick finally murmured, "And so the lie is revealed. Toblakai has told Shaik nothing, not him, nor Mathok, nor you, Leomin. This is your way of getting back into power. Crush a conspiracy and thereby eliminate all your rivals. And now you invite me into the lie." Leomin replied, "Not a great lie. Shaik has been informed that Bidethal hunts children once more." Heberick said, "But not Felicin in particular." Leomin said, "The Chosen One must not let her personal loyalties place the entire rebellion at risk. She would act too quickly." Heberick said, "And you think I give a damn about this rebellion, Leomin?" Leomin smiled as he leaned back on the cushions. He said, "You care about nothing, Heberick, not even yourself. But no, that is not true, is it? There is Felicin. There is the child." Heberick climbed to his feet, saying, "I am done here." Leomin said, "Go well, friend. Know that your company is always welcome here." The ex-priest made his way towards the ladder. Reaching it, he paused and said, "And here I'd been led to believe that the snakes were gone from this pit." Leomin laughed as he said, "The cool air but makes them dormant. Be careful on that ladder, Ghost Hands." After the old man had left, Toblakai sheathed his sword and rose. He said, "He will head straight to Shaik." Leomin shrugged, then asked, "Will he?" "No, I think not. Not to Shaik."
Leomin is quite crafty. And I think we got a hint of that from the first part of the book when he was chained up with Karsa. Certainly he has a higher level of awareness and intellect to be able to track all of this deceit that's happening here in the heart of Raraku.
I would expect that from the Seven Cities James Bond.
Yeah.
What
True.
a mess this camp is.
Oh, yeah.
A den of scum and villainy. It's terrible.
Yeah. I found this to be a challenging section of the book just because everybody in here is so deceitful.
Yeah. I did love that comment from Heberick about the snakes in the pit, though. That was really good.
Oh, yeah. I like it.
In general, I like Leoman's dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't really bother me that much. It's all these other bad people around.
Well, Leoman, at this point, like Heberick says, is there an ulterior motive to like get the others fighting so that he can be the favored one again? Yeah.
We don't really know Leoman that well either. To be
Right.
honest, we've had a little bit from him.
True. But his manner of speaking, though, you're right, is far less troubling than some of the others that we encounter in this camp.
Mm-hmm.
At least to me.
You know, Good is an interesting perspective because I like Karsa, but he's not, objectively not a good person, you know?
True.
And so maybe my issue is the duplicitous nature of these characters, where I don't like people that are backstabbers, schemers. I appreciate honor, and Karsa is honorable. He does have a code.
That's true. That little snippet that you get of Bidithal with his predilections towards young girls and stuff like that, that already puts that kind of a sour taste in your mouth where you're primed to not like him. And so maybe that's something.
Absolutely. Of all the temples of the native cults in 7 cities, only the ones raised in the name of a particular god displayed an architectural style that could be seen to echo the ancient ruins in the circle of temples. And so, in Heberick's mind, there was nothing accidental to Bidithal's choice of abode. Had the foundations of the temple the High Mage now occupied still held aloft walls and ceiling, it would be seen to be a low, strangely elongated dome, buttressed by half arches like the ribs of a vast sea creature, or perhaps the skeletal framework of a longship. The tent cloth covering the withered and crumbled remnants was affixed to the few surviving upright wings. These wings and the floor plan gave sufficient evidence of what the temple had originally looked like, and in the 7 holy cities and among its more populated lesser kin, a certain extant temple could be found that closely resembled this ruin in style.
I wonder if those half arches, like ribs of a vast sea creature, would be like Denrabi.
The legs of a centipede Denrabi? Yeah.
That kind of a...
Certainly not serpentine, though. Right? Chitinous legs?
Chitinous?
Not serpentine, potentially reptile-like.
Reptile T-Rex-like? Something.
And in these truths, Heberick suspected a mystery. Bidithal had not always been a high mage, not in title in any case. In the Dobri language, he had been known as Rashanais, the archpriest of the cult of Rashan, which had existed in 7 cities long before the Throne of Shadow had been reoccupied. In the twisted minds of humanity, it seemed, there was nothing objectionable about worshipping an empty throne. Heberick thought, no stranger than kneeling before the boar of summer, before a god of war.
Is Rashan the human version of the Elder Warren of Shadow? Mianus is the other one that gets mentioned in a bit. And if I'm not mistaken, they're both a sort of version of Shadow, because I get confused when, and I think it was Culp, referred to it as Mianus Rashan.
Yeah, I think the information that we got in Gardens of the Moon is a bit of a Gardens of the Moonism, where he cleaned it up later. It means the same thing, basically.
Well, because it's something to do with, I thought one was a little bit more illusionist based, which is what Culp was using, but maybe they're kind of one and the same. Illusion and shadow sort of kind of intertwine anyway. Does that sound...
Yeah.
Okay.
The cult of Rashan had not taken well the ascensions of Amanus, Shadow Throne, and the Rope into positions of penultimate power within the Warren of Shadow. Though Heberick's knowledge of the details was sketchy at best, it seemed that the cult had torn itself apart. Blood had been spilled within temple walls, and in the aftermath of desecrating murder, only those who acknowledged the mastery of the new gods remained among the devotees. To the wayside, bitter and licking deep wounds, the banished slunk away. Men like Bidithal. Defeated, but, Heberick suspected, not yet finished. He thought, for it is the Mianus temple of the 7 cities that most closely mimic this ruin in architectural style, as if a direct descendant of this land's earliest cults. Within the whirlwind, the cast-out Rashanais had found refuge, further proof of his belief that the whirlwind was but a fragment of a shattered warren, and that shattered warren was Shadow. Heberick thought, and if that is indeed the case, what hidden purpose holds Bidithal to Shaik? Is he truly loyal to Drajna the Apocalyptic, to this holy conflagration in the name of liberty? Answers to such questions were long in coming, if at all. The unknown player, the unseen current beneath this rebellion, indeed beneath the Malazan Empire itself, was the new ruler of Shadow and his deadly companion. He thought Amanus, Shadow Throne, who was Kelonved, Emperor of Malaz and conqueror of 7 cities. Cotillion, who was Dancer, master of the Talon and the Empire's deadliest assassin, deadlier even than Surly. Gods below, something breathes there. I now wonder, Whose war is this?
Amen to that, Hebrick. Answers are long and coming indeed. All of this information about the fragments of Warrens, I remember reading it the first time and being utterly confused. And now that I'm, slowing down, trying to take some more time, reading it several times, it's no better.
What do you need help with, Dane?
It's just, it can be, as everybody knows, I guess, people who've read through the series a couple of times, there's a lot of things that take a long time to get an answer to. Several books, and still some others that maybe never, ever get answered. And so it can still be confusing. Like even on the second read, like I said, it can still be a bit of a challenge to try and keep track of all of the different plot lines and what's going on. I enjoy it, but it can be sometimes a struggle for me.
Well, let me know if you need help with anything.
Yeah.
Distracted by such troubling thoughts as he made his way to Bidethal's abode, it was a moment before Hebrick realized that his name had been called. Eyes straining to focus as he searched for the originator of that call, he was suddenly startled by a hand settling on his shoulder. The voice said, "My apologies, ghost hands, if I frightened you." Finally recognizing the tall, white-robed figure standing beside him, Hebrick replied, "Ah, Lorik. These are not your usual haunts, are they?" A slightly pained smile, Lorik said, "I regret that my presence is seen as a haunting, unless of course your use of the word was unmindful." Hebrick said, "Careless, you mean. It was. I have been in the company of Leomin, inadvertently breathing fumes of Durhang. What I meant was, I rarely see you in these parts, that is all." Lorik murmured, thus explaining your perturbed expression. Hebrick thought, meeting you, the Durhang, or Leomin? The tall mage, one of Shaik's three, was not by nature approachable, nor given to drama. Hebrick had no idea which Warren the man employed in his sorceries. Perhaps Shaik alone knew. After a moment, the high mage resumed. Your route suggests a visit to a certain resident here in the circle. Further, I sense a storm of emotions stirring around you, which could lead one to surmise the impending encounter will prove tumultuous. Hebrick growled, You mean we might argue, Bidethal and I? Well, yes, that's damned likely. Lorik said, I myself have but recently departed his company. Perhaps a warning? He is much agitated over something, and so short of temper. Hebrick said, perhaps it was something you said. Lorik conceded, entirely possible, and if so, then I apologize. Hebrick said, Feiner's tusks, Lorik. What are you doing in this damned army of vipers? Again the pained smile, then a shrug. Lorik said, Mathok's tribes have among them women and men who dance with flare-necked vipers, such as are sometimes found where grasses grow deep. It is a complicated and obviously dangerous dance, yet one possessed of a certain charm. There are attractions to such exercise. Hebrick said, You enjoy taking risks, even with your life. Lorik asked, I might in turn ask why you are here, Hebrick? Do you seek to return to your profession as historian, thus ensuring that the tale of Shaik and the whirlwind will be told? Or are you indeed ensnared with loyalties to the noble cause of liberty? Surely you cannot say you are both, can you? Hebrick muttered, I was a middling historian at best, Lorik. He was reluctant to elaborate on his reasons for remaining, none of which had any real relevance, since Shaik was not likely to let him leave in any case.
Why do you think that Shaik wouldn't let Hebrick leave if he wanted to? I was wondering if it was maybe like a circle of trust, and he knows too much for her to allow him to leave, and maybe blab to anybody else what he knows. Because if we remember back to Deadhouse Gates, she was very unkind to him during their whole time together. They did have maybe some shared trauma, but I feel like if you dislike someone as much as she seemed to dislike him, when the time came to be rid of them, you would take it and just say, go.
I think a bit of it may be as a reminder to her past, as well as the comfort of someone that she knew from before she was Shaik.
Okay.
Otherwise, she is surrounded by people she barely knows. He is literally the only one that knew her before she became Shaik.
Well, that's a good point. Just some level of familiarity that she has with somebody in this whole place of whatever they said, 100,000 people or something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That makes sense.
And maybe she's matured and she finds some value in what he is now.
Okay.
I say that she's kind of ignoring him too. So I don't know.
Yeah, he did say that, right?
It's too early to tell, I guess, maybe.
Yeah.
Lorik said, You're impatient with me. I will leave you to your task then. He made a slight bow as he stepped back. Watching the man walk away, Hebrick stood motionless for a moment longer, then he resumed his journey. Bidethal was agitated, was he? An argument with Lorik or something behind the veil? The High Mage's dwelling was before him now, the tent walls and peaked ceiling sun-faded and smoke-stained, a dusty smear of mottled magenta squatting above the thick foundation stones. Huddled just outside the flap entrance was a sunburned, filthy figure, mumbling in some foreign language, face hidden beneath long, greasy strands of brown hair. The figure had no hands and no feet, the stumps showing old scar tissue, yet still suppurating a milky yellow discharge. The man was using one of his wrist stumps to draw broad patterns in the thick dust, surrounding himself in linked chains, round and round, each pass obscuring what had been made before. Hebrick thought, this one belongs to Toblakai. His master work, Sulgar? Silgar, the Nathi. The man was one of the many crippled, diseased, and destitute inhabitants of the Circle of Temples. Hebrick wondered what had drawn him to Bidithal's tent.
Birds of a feather, that's what.
True. This is the Viper's Nest, not Leoman's Pit.
Yeah.
Hebrick arrived at the entrance. In tribal fashion, the flap was tied back, the customary expansive gesture of invitation, the message one of ingenuousness. As he ducked to step through, Silgar stirred, head snapping up. He said, "Brother of mine, I've seen you before, yes, maimed. We are kin." The language was a tangled mix of Nathi, Malazan, and Early. The man's smile revealed a row of rotting teeth. Silgar went on, "Flesh and spirit, yes? We are, you and I, the only honest mortals here." Striding into Bidithal's home, Hebrick muttered, "If you say so." Silgar's cackle followed him in. No effort had been made to clean the sprawling chamber within. Bricks and rubble lay scattered across a floor of sand, broken mortar, and potsherds.
Number 2.
A half-dozen pieces of furniture were positioned here and there in the cavernous space. There was a large, low bed, wood-slatted and layered in thin mattresses. 4 folding merchant chairs of the local 3-legged kind faced onto the bed in a ragged row, as if Bidithal was in the habit of addressing an audience of acolytes or students. A dozen small oil lamps crowded the surface of a small table nearby. The High Mage had his back to Hebrick and most of the long chamber. A torch fixed to a spear that had been thrust upright, its base mounded with stones and rubble, stood slightly behind Bidithal's left shoulder, casting the man's own shadow onto the tent wall. A chill rippled through Hebrick, for it seemed the High Mage was conversing in a language of gestures with his own shadow. Hebrick thought, cast out in name only, perhaps, still eager to play with Mianus. In the whirlwind's name or his own? Hebrick called out, "High Mage." The ancient withered man slowly turned and rattled, "Come to me, I would experiment." Hebrick said, "Not the most encouraging invitation, Bidithal," but he approached nonetheless. Bidithal waved impatiently and said, "Closer, I would see if your ghostly hands cast shadows." Hebrick halted. He stepped back, shaking his head, and said, "No doubt you would, but I wouldn't." Bidithal shouted, "Come!" Hebrick flatly said, "No." The dark, wrinkled face twisted into a scowl, black eyes glittering. Bidithal said, "You are too eager to protect your secrets." Hebrick asked, "And you aren't?" Bidithal replied, "I serve the whirlwind. Nothing else is important." Hebrick said, "Barring your appetites." The High Mage cocked his head, then made a small, almost effeminate wave with one hand. He said, "Mortal necessities. Even when I was Reshanais, we saw no imperative to turn away from the pleasures of the flesh. Indeed, the interweaving of the shadows possesses great power."
It's interesting. I just thought of this. Hebrick just says, "barring your appetites," and he already knows what he's referencing.
Oh, yeah.
It must be so well known that, like, what else could it possibly be that you're referring to? Little slime ball. Okay.
Hebrick said, "And so you Shaik when she was but a child, and scourged from her all future chance at such pleasures as you now espouse. I see little logic in that, Bidithal, only sickness." With a smirk, Bidithal said, "My purposes are beyond your ability to comprehend, Ghost Hands. You cannot wound me with such clumsy efforts." Hebrick said, "I'd been given to understand you were agitated, discomfited." Bidithal replied, "Ah, Lorik, another stupid man. He mistook excitement for agitation, but I will say no more of that, not to you." Hebrick stepped closer. He said, "Allow me to be equally succinct, Bidithal. If you even so much as look in Felissen's direction, these hands of mine will twist your head from your neck." Bidithal said, "Felissen? Shaik's dearest? Do you truly believe she is a virgin? Before Shaik returned, the child was a waif, an orphan in the camp. None cared a whit about her." Hebrick said, "None of which matters." Bidithal turned away. He said, "Whatever you say, Ghost Hands. Hood knows, there are plenty of others." Hebrick said, "All now under Shaik's protection. Do you imagine she will permit such abuses from you?" Bidithal replied, "You shall have to ask her that yourself. Now leave me. You are guest no longer." Hebrick hesitated, barely resisting an urge to kill the man now, this instant. He thought, would it even be preemptive? Has he not as much as admitted to his crimes? Nor will I be alone in this. Even Toblakai has vowed protection over Felissen. But what of the other children? Why does Shaik tolerate this, unless it is as Leoman has said? She needs Bidithal, needs him to betray Febral's plotting. But this was not a place of Malazan justice, was it? The only law that existed here was Shaik's. Hebrik wondered, yet what do I care for all that? This creature does not deserve to live. Bidethal's back turned once more, his own shadow dancing on its own on the tent wall. He murmured, contemplating murder? You would not be the first, nor, I suspect, the last. I should warn you, however, this temple is newly resanctified. Take another step towards me, Ghost Hands, and you will see the power of that. Hebrik asked, and you believe Shaik will permit you to kneel before Shadow Throne? Bidethal whirled, his face black with rage. He says, Shadow Throne? That foreigner? The roots of Mianus are found in an elder warren, once ruled by... He snapped his mouth shut, then smiled, revealing dark teeth. He continued, not for you. Oh no, not for you, ex-priest. There are purposes within the whirlwind. Your existence is tolerated, but little more than that. Challenge me, Ghost Hands, and you will know holy wrath. Hebrik's answering grin was hard. He said, I've known it before, Bidethal, yet I remain. Purposes? Perhaps mine is to block your path. I'd advise you to think on that. Stepping outside once more, he paused briefly, blinking in the harsh sunlight. Silgar was nowhere to be seen, yet he had completed an elaborate pattern in the dust around Hebrik's moccasins. Chains surrounding a figure with stumps instead of hands, yet footed. The ex-priest scowled, kicking through the image as he set forth. Silgar was no artist. Hebrik's own eyes were bad. Perhaps he'd only seen what his fears urged. It had been Silgar himself within the circle of chains the first time, after all. In any case, it was not important enough to make him turn back for a second look. Besides, his own steps had no doubt left it ruined, none of which explained the chill that clung to him as he walked beneath the searing sun. The vipers were writhing in their pit, and he was in their midst.
I'm just now wondering if this business with Bidethal, his rage against Shadow Throne, that the cult of Rashan was not happy with the ascension of Shadow Throne and Cotillion, is in any way tied back to when Cotillion was talking with Kalam, when they said that their rule was possibly being challenged.
Oh, interesting. I guess we'll see what was actually meant by that if we actually learn that in the future. But, I mean, that's an interesting guess.
Yeah, I hadn't picked up on that the first time, like his rage, like how upset he was with Shadow Throne and Cotillion specifically. So, okay.
Yeah. It's funny that the Pit of Vipers is called out there. I hadn't read that far when I made the comment earlier about this being a Pit of Vipers.
And it absolutely is. Man, terrible.
All right, we're going to stop there, and we will pick up the chapter where we left off next week.
Okay.
For standout moments, finding out that the whirlwind appears to have originally began as a fragment of the realm of shadow that was taken over by some local desert spirit.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. And I guess that could actually happen. Like these individual pieces that they're, what are they, curled Emerlon originally?
Yes.
That some deity could just kind of co-op a section of it and make it their own. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah. The conversation between Leomin and Hebrik was enjoyable. I like Leomin's dialogue.
Mm-hmm. When compared to some of these others that we've been introduced to, he's far more tolerable anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like the information that you got from him.
I did enjoy being reminded of the enmity between Hebrik and Karsa/Toblakai.
Yeah.
That was fun to go back to.
Yeah.
But this is a rough section. There's not a lot to be enjoyed.
It's true.
You know what I mean? From standout moments.
Yeah.
All right, great job today, Dane.
Good job, Kamraun.
You got any final thoughts before we drop off here?
We've touched on this already, but this section of the book is challenging in a way, and you come across certain characters whose purposes are probably less than pure, and yet they linger around. It's really irksome, and this camp is full of them. And as you mentioned, and as Hebrik notes, the vipers writhing in their pit. And sometimes I wonder, people have a hard time with the first part of this book with Karsa and all the things that he gets up to. Remembering what's going on now, this is just as bad, if not worse, for me. So
yeah, I mean, you got to power through, though.
You do. I mean, there's a purpose to all of it, I guess, and you know, the bigger story starts to come into play as you work through it.
I'm going to ask you that you remind me of that when we get to Toll the Hounds.
Okay. I'll try to remember. That's a ways off now.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week.